So if you have any questions, you can always ask her.
Where do I teach? American River in Sacramento.
So you guys almost got the same kind of clips.
Well,
Sacramento.
yeah, actually, I bought them in Roseville. They were on sale. Yeah.
I figured it was something Sacramento.
Well, do you have any questions or comments before?
Yeah, did you hand out syllabus on the first day?
No, they're online on Canvas. Any other questions?
So are your work predominantly be on Canvas?
Yeah. If you have any laptops, desktops, cell phones, you could remove them. You don't need to take notes in this class. You can just have your drinks on the table or desk. Brad, do you have any questions before we begin? All right, let's move on. Sorry, go ahead.
Is this class going to be, I don't know the answer, but is this class going to be different in terms of the material that we're reading compared to the last class? Or as an intro to philosophy?
Do you know how many times you had to practice remembering the alphabets? Maybe 50,000 times before you were able to put them together to create words. You didn't know the meaning of the words, but you were able to create them. And then you had to play with the words another 50,000 times to be able to create sentences. The point I'm trying to make is repetition is very boring. I understand that. No. It's just for me, not so much for you. That you have to repeat the same lesson over and over and over and over again. You know, it's like you just don't have the proper tools to be in the relationship, any relationship, but, you know, biologically, psychologically, you just don't want to be alone for good reasons. And so, you know, you get into one, it doesn't work. You get the second one, that doesn't work. And you got to do this over and over and over again until you're like 35, 40, 50, 60. You look yourself in the mirror and you say, you know, I suck as a human being. And then, you know, these days, it's, Leah, how are you? And then you kind of write in your journal or you go back and reread all the things you've written. And then you're able to kind of put the dots together. And that'll take you some time. And then it's a kind of frightening place to be, that you've repeated going out with the same people, same temperament, same history, same traumas, over and over and over again. You've gone through 50 people, and now you learned the lesson. Why couldn't you learn the first time? I don't know. Human beings really we're not the sort of animals that can learn things easily, or ever maybe even. So this class will very much be the same as the religion and the philosophy.
Same as what I can hear. Religion, what?
And philosophy.
That's another humanities.
Mm-hmm.
What number is that?
I have no idea.
What number is that? What's the number?
I couldn't tell you.
You took a class on him before, right?
Yeah,
So that's what you was referring to? What class was it?
it was intro to philosophy. But
Oh,
I
okay.
can't remember like the number.
Okay.
For those of you who have gone to the modules and checked out some of the materials for this class, once in a while you'll come upon an audio or a video. Those audios and videos are from my classes, and I am the speaker. Many, many years ago, Cassie called me and said, if you were to record your classes, maybe I can put them online for you. And this was a time where my health was kind of going down, and every night where I put my head on the pillow, I kind of imagined my own death. So I said to myself, well, if I was to die, how would my kids remember me? I mean, since most of us are easily forgotten because our lives are quite small and irrelevant, insignificant, we don't really do much with our lives. And add to it the fact that everybody is in the blitz of advertisements. Can't really focus on anything for too long. You just get stolen the next second. So it wasn't so much about me thinking that what I say in my classes are important or have any depth. It was mostly for my children, that should anything happen to me, maybe when they get to be 30, 40, 50, 60, when they go through like 5 or 6 divorces, when their health falls apart, maybe they lose a job or they go bankrupt, if not physically, certainly emotionally. Maybe they can say, I had this dad and he's dead now, but 20 years ago, someone recorded or published some of his works, so maybe I should kind of listen to see what this guy had to say. And maybe at the age of 50 or 60, they find a few things relevant and interesting. So the person who made this happen is Cassie. So next time you click on it and you listen to my jibber jabber, think of Cassie as well. This is our second day. Usually I talk about the syllabus, the nature of this class a little bit. I did that for my philosophy class, and I kind of feel like talking about something else, but we should certainly talk about, the syllabus a little bit. But if you have any questions that are somewhat exciting and interesting, it'll be good to hear them. Leah? Anything?
How long have you been teaching?
Just a couple years.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ethics and values vary from like person to person and then culture to culture.
Good morning.
It's just such a subjective thing. How do you, after having taught this for a while, like, what is the viewpoint of the lens? Like, American values and ethics, or global human values and ethics, or individual?
If you come from a culture that's very cohesive, if, for example, you happen to live in an Amish community, or, 2 centuries ago, there are no alternative perspectives to sex before marriage. It's just there is no sex before marriage. Nobody has sex before marriage, And if you do have sex before marriage, you're categorized as a prostitute, or someone who had this bad fortune of falling in love. Or maybe your husband died and you have to provide for your kids and you become an outcast in your society. So there is this universal, ethical perspective in that particular community that sex before marriage is just wrong. In a culture where cohesion does not exist and people are fractured, broken, psychologically, they have no parents, they highly value individual rights and privacy, and my opinion is just as good as yours, then anything goes, really. So what you have is perspectivism. And that's something perhaps we should talk about in this class at some point, where at some stage in our history, things just fell apart. Religion went away after probably the 14th century or so. It had actually lessened its intensity in human life. And then scientific revolution came about, and then capitalism blossomed. And for the first time, we actually believed that you could be happy down here, buying a big house, finding your soulmate, having lots of money, going to school, getting educated. And then another aspect was that the moment you are privileged, in other words, the moment you have a good amount of money in your pocket, you have power. And power gets you drunk. And then you say, you know, I'm just going to live a kind of lifestyle that fits me and my temperament and my community. There is also, I suppose, emotional, spiritual power, kind of like Jesus and the Judaic tradition. That at a certain point, Jesus walks into a temple. And, you know, Judaism has been around for a few thousand years. And Jesus basically looks at the Jews and says, everything you guys have done is wrong. You know, you no longer need to be looking for a Messiah. That's kind of like David. I am him. You know. And what he's basically saying is that Moses came about and gave you circumcision. That if you're a man, you get your penis and do ABCD to it. If you want to follow me, the ethics have changed now. You have to circumcise your soul, your spirit. And all of a sudden, everything turns upside down. You know. So your question is really good, it's just very complicated.
It's interesting having our friends visit from Singapore. And, you know, they've been there for 6 months. And the wife is from the Midwest. And Singaporean society is very collective.
Yeah.
Very collective. And so we were talking last night, said it's so chaotic here. And it's very jarring, not only like hearing the news about what's happening in the US, but when we came back, people's behavior is very, you know, individual and, like you said, like just not caring about their impact, and the way people drive and the way people act. So really, it's just an interesting subject.
So this class is not really going to teach you much. We're just here to just chit-chat for a few minutes and then go home. Sounds okay? And make sure you get your master's and a PhD. Don't forget that. CSU Northridge. Cheap. Okay. I live in the Tower building. It's this big, concrete, tall building. I'm on the 4th floor. For those of you who may not know, that building is going to come down by the end of the summer.
What?
Yeah, the elevators don't work. It's cost too much money to upkeep the building, so they're tearing it down. And so they're building a new structure at some point. But for the, I'm sorry? I don't know. I don't know how politics work. So for those of you who may come up, I'm on the 4th floor. My recommendation is don't come to visit me. If you have any questions, any comments, any concerns, just raise your hand in class and they can talk about them, whether they be a grade or the way I teach or whatever it is. But just in case you do want to come by and visit, as you know, I'm from the Middle East, which means that you should always come to my office with a gift, a housewarming gift, like a cake or donuts or coffee. Now, given my age, there are lots of things I can't really eat anymore, especially now that just a year ago I had my open heart surgery. So bring me like 3 bags of coffee. You know, you can go to Costco.
Coffee is bad for the heart.
It's good for my heart. Cassie this morning came to my office, you know, about 9 o'clock and brought this 3 pound of San Francisco Bay French roast, dark roast coffee. They're on sale currently for $18. They're usually 25 or so. So can it be categorized as a bribe? Absolutely. Is it bad? No, not really. I mean, Trump does it. Why can't I? The nice thing about bribery, of course, I'm only joking, but you should also just reflect on it. The nice thing about bribery is that imagine that for the next few weeks, every other week you bring me like 3 pounds of coffee, but you're not really in the right place in life to think about the ideas we talk about in this class or to write good essays. They have no depth, so you just kind of just ramble on, and you just keep getting Fs. And it's the last day of this class, or maybe last day of the semester. I'm sitting in my office and I have to issue grades. And I come upon your name and I realize you haven't done any work for this class, but every other week you've gone to Costco and you have purchased, 3 pounds of coffee, and you give it to me. Well, $20 every other week. We're talking about 15 weeks, that's almost $300. It's also gas, there's also time, there's also energy, and all these are like sacrifices that you've made. And even though your scores, come to a 0.000, in other words, you have earned an F, just before I click the submission button, I say, wait a minute, Leah has bought me $300 worth of coffee. Is it really fair or just to give her an F? And the answer, of course, is no.
That's where the
Hello.
That's where the bribery comes in.
So, and bribery comes in a variety of different shapes and forms. Saying hello to someone who looks mean. Just being friendly goes a long way.
Really good.
Okay. If you really have some concerns and if you want to come by the office, you're more than welcome. One of the things you just need to understand is you and I are at different stages in life. I am about 63, you're like 18 or 19 or 20. I have been to where you are. I know what you want, where you want to go. You don't really know where I am and where I want to go. At 63, you begin to think about yourself and your life and time, especially time, very, very differently. And so, given the fact that I don't really have very much time, but you have plenty of it, and being in this, having been in this business for over 30 years, I know that young people are really good at wasting time. And given that I don't really enjoy my time being wasted by stupid questions, I would appreciate if you just don't come and visit. But I would appreciate very much all the gifts that you are able to give me. Of course, I'm only joking. So that's the office part. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, because you're drinking tea.
Like, what
kind of
else?
Tea? What kind of tea do you drink?
Well, tea is like, after like 5 cups of coffee.
Oh, okay.
Like, what did you have in mind?
Well, I'm not gonna tell you.
Yeah, because it won't be a gift.
Well, I don't like,
It's a surprise.
at a certain point in your life, surprises are not good for your heart.
I don't think you.
I just want coffee. I don't like books. I don't like tea. I don't like conversation. I just like coffee.
How about we all collectively send him a gift?
That's
Yeah.
what you basically said.
Emails. Leah, you sure you have any questions? Nothing?
It's about my transfer essays.
Like personal statements?
Yeah.
What about them? You asked this question in the philosophy class. Okay, go ahead.
How do I write how do I write a compelling narrative that's not so much centered on like trauma? That's the most I can get for like writing essays.
So first of all, if you want to, for example, apply to Stanford, and Stanford, I mean, I don't know. It really depends on the committee that's sitting and looking at transcripts and applications. If you happen to be very, very, very lucky, your application will fall into the hands of someone who has had access or experience in both worlds, a world that's solid, as well as a world that has been filled with trauma. In other words, they have been married, they had all these wonderful thoughts about marriage. At a certain point, the marriage dissolves, they go through a divorce, they get depressed, they become lonely, they may even be suicidal, and then they recover, okay? Now, that's usually very, very rare for people to have kind of a healthy dose of both worlds. Usually we are very lopsided, you know, it's kind of like a car that has 3 good wheels, but one tire is just flat and the car is just wobbling. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that logic is tempered by emotions and emotions are tempered by logic as well. How do you create this harmony? It takes a lot of work. My recommendation is do the best you can. You know, I don't know if you've seen Rambo 4. It supposedly takes place in Burma. For those of you who don't know what Rambo is, Sylvester Stallone, John Rambo. So at the beginning of the movie, there are these Christians who are visiting Burma and they're looking for John Rambo because he's the only person who's able to get them from point A to point B on a raft. No one else is willing because it's a war zone. And the first thing that Rambo asked them is, do you guys have guns or weapons to combat, you know, the opposing side? They say, no, all we have are Bibles. And Rambo looks at them and says, just fuck off. I'm quoting. And time passes, certain things happen. And these Christians are very gung-ho about life being very sacred. Only God gives life and only God should be able to take life and human beings should have no part in that. Near the end of the movie, the very Christian who believed that, you know, killing is bad and evil and only God's hands should be bloodied like that. Near the end of the movie, that Christian coming to realize that his friends are being butchered by some of the folks out there, he grabs this piece of rock and smashes this guy's head into pieces. And the point I'm trying to make is the only way you can capture someone, you know, is not so much by logic, it's through emotions. You know, we can sit in this classroom and have a very civilized conversation about racism, about what it means to be immigrant, or what it means to be poor, or what it means to go through a divorce. But when you're going through these things yourself, the story is very, very different. You know, the emotions are extremely powerful, and logic can't even come close. So the point I'm trying to make is, however emotional you want your personal statement to be, make sure that they're tamed by a writing that is logical, that you can reveal to the committee that you understand trauma or you understand emotions and you understand how they have played such a heavy hand in your life. And as long as you can capture your audience, you'll be fine.
Sounds like an art.
Yeah. And if you can't convince someone, you just can't convince them. I mean, always go back to history, Leah. Socrates couldn't convince people. Moses couldn't do it. Muhammad couldn't do it. The Buddha couldn't do it. Jesus couldn't do it. It doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter how creative you are. It doesn't matter how inspirational you are. You know, some people are just not ready to look, to read, to hear, to feel. And so they may just trash your application. Or the flip side. Good luck. Emails. There is really no need to email me. If you have any questions, just come to class with your questions. If you have any concerns, just come to class with your concerns and we can talk about them. If you're going to miss class, just miss class. I don't need to know about it. You just need to know that every day, every class meeting from today on, you will have a question due at the end of the day that is related to something we talked about in class. So if you've missed class, you're going to miss this question assignment part of the class, which means that you're going to lose some points. Can you somehow make that up? The answer is no. Now, just in case you do want to email me, always start with a greeting. Amir, hello, how are you? How's your family? Are you still alive or dead? By the way, I have a concern, A, B, C, D. I am not your friend. I don't want to be your friend. We are not equals.
Just want coffee.
I don't even want your fucking coffee.
I knew that would piss you off.
You just need to make sure that you need to express yourself in a way that whoever it is that's looking at you, reading you, can come to the conclusion that, you're somewhat civilized, that you've had parents. And even if you don't have parents, you've read a few books. You know how to reflect. You know how to be social. So have some self-respect. And I'm not just talking about this class. Whoever out there that you want to introduce yourselves to, make sure you start with a greeting. Okay? If there is no greeting, I will delete your email. I will not reply. Sounds okay? Yeah. ISIS.
So like just the way that you're trying to be like, how are you?
It's just like a nanosecond. And you don't even have to mean it.
Oh, I have a question.
ISIS, you want to pass this class, no? You ever like a guy or a gal? I don't know what your orientation is, but let's just say you like a guy. Okay? If you want to hang out with him, do you need to make sure that he likes you? If he doesn't like you, he's not going to hang out with you. So what are you going to do for him to like you? You're going to shower, smell good? You're going to dress okay? You're going to use good language? You're going to start a good conversation? Now, you may not mean any of that stuff. Maybe you just want to bed him. Who the hell cares? But even to take him to your house, you need to make sure he likes you. You need to make sure I like you as a human being. That you know how to speak, you know how to write nice emails, because come one of these days, like Leah, you're going to transfer to San Francisco State. You're going to run into the chair of some forsaken department you're applying to. They need to like you, to admit you to the program. You're going to go to a job interview. You need to present yourself well. Now, it doesn't mean you like Home Depot or you care for any of the customers. So it's all about presentation, that's all. Can I tell you a story, ISIS? My brother and his wife, this was like way before I was married and had kids, they had this gift card from this fancy restaurant in Roseville, like for $500. So my brother calls me and says, Amir, before you go back to Oakland, let's go have dinner at this place. You have a gift card. So, sure. So we go to this place, right? And I ordered like a Caesar salad. And my thinking is they're going to bring me this huge bowl of just lettuce with some cheese and some dressing on it. It's one lettuce leaf. I kid you not. One lettuce leaf with like a few shredded cheese and a drop of dressing. And the plate is like as big as this table. And I'm looking at this. And I look at my brother and say, how much is this? $38. Presentation. Ahmed.
That was the best lettuce you've ever had.
Was what?
Was it the best lettuce you've ever had?
The one I stole. Have you ever stolen anything? Yeah. You know, as you get a little older, you just become way too political. You know, you just don't want to get caught. And after a while, life just gets boring. And you kind of sit with your friends or your siblings and say, remember when we were 2 or 5 or 10, we did A, B, C, D? Say, yeah. Should we do that again? Say, well, you know, I'm 25 now if I get caught. You know, San Quentin. But man, there is so much excitement about stealing. You know, you go to Safeway, you look to your left, you look to your right, you look up there, see the cameras, you put a few chickens in your backpack. And for the first time in many years, you feel like you're sweating and you're nervous and you're anxious, and then you run out. And then you go to your Tinder account. You say, I stole chickens today. And you're so proud. Wait, this is an ethics class? Any questions before we go to the next point? Leah?
I suppose drug ethics, what exactly is it that differentiates, you know, like the random tweakers in San Francisco from like
The random what?
the random tweakers in San Francisco to like regular people who use pharmaceuticals like antidepressants or ADHD medications to function? Is it not the exact same thing?
Have you ever heard of Gabor Mate? He's an interesting guy. He had come to the conclusion, I mean, he's kind of way out there. He's not your regular or normal psychologist. He had come to the conclusion that people with depression, you know, these regular ways or normal ways that we try to treat them, antidepressants, therapy, and those things, it just doesn't work. So what he was doing in Canada was he had them experiment with psychedelics under a very, very extremely controlled environment. And he had come to realize that, you know, after a couple of sessions, some of their trouble just goes away. Of course, Canada went on to argue that drugs are outlawed and those things, and his business kind of shut down. But the point I'm trying to make is, your question is really, 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 really good. It's just very complex. Couple of reasons. My parents one day packed my stuff and my brothers. I was 11, he was 10. We were put on Lufthansa and we flew to India. Now, India, very much like Singapore, language is not privatized. It's not individualized. You can't talk about your emotions, you can't talk about your feelings, you can't talk about your opinions. It's just disrespectful. You know, it's like you look around you, everybody's poor, and you just kind of scream, look at my poverty, look at what poverty has done to me. And someone kind of just slaps you and says, look around you, man, everybody's poor. And so what you realize is that nobody complains about any of this stuff, the troubles of life. It just doesn't exist in the culture. So when I went to India, nobody told me that my parents sent us to India because my brother and I misbehaved. They didn't love us. That my parents betrayed us. And what you realize is that if those thoughts aren't there, the language isn't there. And if the thoughts and the words aren't there, the emotions aren't there. And so if the thoughts and the emotions and the words aren't there, it just doesn't exist. Now, when you talk about, for example, depression, a couple of things you should consider. The culture in which you live. Next is your temperament. Some temperaments, Leah, are very, very open to sadness and depression. Some temperaments. And it has nothing to do with who and what you are. It has nothing to do with the culture in which you're born. You just gravitate towards things that are dark. Sadness is something that nourishes you. But in the wrong culture, sadness becomes a traumatic experience that requires healing. And the truth is, in many of the ancient cultures, Singapore, India, the Middle East, you know what you do with sadness? You write poetry. It forces you to think and reflect. Okay? Not here. The other aspect of depression has to do with how you are trained, how you're conditioned, how you're educated in interpreting experiences. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you know much about the Afghani culture. It's Afghanistan. Incest takes place all the time. Uncles and their nieces, fathers and whatever. And something really interesting happens in that culture and its people. They grow up, they get married, they have healthy lives. No need for therapy. Now, I'm not saying that's for everyone, but the majority survive in a very, very healthy way. I mean, consider for a moment, even in the West, up to about maybe 18th century, your father would leave the house, kiss you goodbye, see you in the afternoon or see you tonight. He would never come back. Died in a battlefield somewhere, got sick and died on the path home. And yet you had no reason to seek therapy. Your mom would just smack you and said, this is the way life is. In other words, culture allowed disaster to happen. And it wouldn't paralyze you. We have been warrior animals for the past many, many thousands of years. So the question that you need to ask yourself, at what stage in our human evolution, socially, culturally, did almost every aspect of life become so traumatizing? You know, we had an instructor here on this campus. He was teaching business. He was a part-time instructor some years ago. I went in the class. It was an email that was sent to all of us that he used this language, this word rape in his class to, I don't know, help student understand something. And one of the students just ran off, went directly to the Tower building, 7th floor, complained to the dean. That I heard this word, I was triggered, ABCD happened, and the instructor was fired. Okay. And the point I'm trying to make is the following. You and I now live at a time where everybody has triggers. You don't even have to say anything to them. A mere look can have explosive consequences. And it's not because of you. You and I live in a culture, and this culture creates waves. Okay. Now, if you've ever gone to the ocean, to a sea, when the wave comes, you know, a tiny wave you can stand. A huge wave will probably push you and break you. What the culture usually creates is humongous waves. Kind of look at Minneapolis, what's happening. You know, all these people rising up. It's a wave. It matters very little who and what you are. The wave consumes you. It injects in you emotions you never thought you had. You know, and all of a sudden you're marching with your peers. And so right now, you and I belong to a culture that says, you know what? You deserve happiness. You're great. You're unique. You're this, you're that. Life owes you. It's not that you owe life anything. Life owes you. and just in case life delivers anything negative to you, you know, you have every right to complain. And that's not the way we've lived. It's brand new. Now, in regards to healing anyone from a traumatizing experience or an experience that has been interpreted as trauma, you have a couple of options. You can find a Gabor Mate somewhere out there who has 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years of experience. He puts you in a very controlled physical environment. That physical environment creates emotional and intellectual forces. And he talks to you. He forces you to feel, to think, to reflect. After 2, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe, then he'll give you a psychedelic experience. And then he'll say, so-and-so, it's time for you to leave. And you go back into your life with a brand new perspective, powerful enough to combat the past and all the junk that lives in society. That's one way to do it. But that's very, very tough because good teachers don't simply accept students. It doesn't work that way. They have to like you. You know, which means that you have to kind of roam the world. You have to kind of go like Marco Polo, go all over the place to figure out if there is anyone out there. And even if you find someone, there's no guarantee that you're not going to be exploited, that you're not going to be lied to. Okay, that's one path. Very tough. The second is find someone. Now remember, someone who has suffered from depression, what you're talking about is, I would put this on the board, but I don't really feel like it right now. Do you know why I have coffee starting at 4 in the morning all the way till about 8:39? Because I've done it for the past 30 years. What you're dealing with is habit. You experiment with one thing, Leah, look at me. You experiment with one thing. And that experiment gives you this feeling of pleasure. It's like sugar. You want more of it. So you do it again and again and again and again. And all of a sudden inside your brain, there's a highway. This is the path I'm going to take. For the past 30 years, I've been waking up at 3:30 in the morning. Even if I have nothing to do, I wake up at 3:30 in the morning. I'm usually on campus by 4. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to use my time productively. Whenever you're talking about anyone suffering from anything, especially when it comes to things like depression, you're talking about habits. Habits have roots inside you. They're like IV. You know, you have two options in removing IV. You can either just get rid of the plant that you can see, or you can dig the ground. Go 50, 60, 80 feet down and grab its roots and yank it out. Okay? Now, getting rid of habits, nearly impossible. Nearly impossible. Let me give you an example how it becomes possible. And I'm going to use the Christian tradition for a moment. Or Abu Jahl in the Islamic tradition. But since you guys don't really know much about the Islamic tradition, I'll just, stick with the Christians. So you have this guy whose name is Saul. Saul has been commissioned by some powerful guy to go around and kill the new converts. Who are the new converts? Those who gravitate towards Jesus Christ. His message is emotional, inspirational, and they love what he has to preach. Now, the problem for Saul and the people he likes is that the number of converts are growing. Paganism is losing its power. Christianity is coming up. and they tell Saul, go around and kill them. Saul says, fine. And he's like the ice of the 3rd century. Okay? He goes around just killing people. I'm sorry, not the 3rd century, but maybe the 1st century. At some point on his journey, he has this like experience. He sees like Jesus Christ in a vision. I don't know if it was dreaming, if he had an out-of-body experience. I don't know any of that. But he has an experience, powerful enough, where Jesus looks at him and says, the hell are you doing, man? You should love my people, not hate them. Now, this is called a cold turkey cutting away from past. You have an experience so profound, so moving. It's like this psychedelic experience, right? That when the experience goes away, you say, I don't want to be Saul anymore. I don't want to kill people anymore. I want to be friends to the new converts. So he changes his name from Saul to Paul, from an enemy to a friend. Now, if you want to know who Paul is, he wrote 15 of the 27 books of the New Testament. If you want the best account of the early Christians, don't approach the Gospels. Gospels are much later. The letters of St. Paul. Okay. Now, sometimes your habits can be conquered, beaten by an experience that is so powerful that kind of just erases the past, and you can walk into life anew. Okay? That's very, very, very rare. The other path is the following. You run into a Socrates. Going back to Isis's question or comment or something. You run into a Socrates. Socrates looks at you. Aha! I don't know Leah, but I like Leah. I don't know why, and I don't care why. Leah looks at Socrates and says, ha! I like Socrates. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I like him. Okay. Now, there are two people in this equation. There is Leah with a past that always creates obstacles. It's like a woman who's never had a father, goes into relationships, and always destroys them because of what she experienced with her father or mother or whatever. It doesn't really matter. A past that simply won't go away. Okay? That always interferes and destroys. Kind of what Jesse talked about. You know, he was very lucky to magically being able to move away from his past and not having the past be an obstacle to every goddamn thing that he touches. Okay? Now, Socrates has something to offer, but you don't know what that is. Imagine Gabor Mate was to see you. Okay, or see me. And says, Amir talks about trauma. He wants to get rid of his trauma. Gabor has something to give me. I also want to get rid of this trauma. But remember, the desire to want this trauma to be removed is very different than being ready to have the trauma removed. These are two different things. I want to buy a car. I desire a car. Do I have the resources? Do I have a stable job? Can I make the monthly payments? Because just the desire by itself is not enough. She wants to graduate from school. Every time she comes to class, I got to remind her, don't forget CSU Northridge, online, $20,000. You'll get your bachelor's in a year and a half, master's another year, a PhD in 2 years. By the time you're 40, you'll be done with your PhD. Now, there are pros and cons to that. Once you get your PhD, your language is going to change. Your husband may not no longer understand you, relate to you, communicate with you. You have a PhD, but your marriage may dissolve. Are you sure you know what you want to do? Okay? So just because you run into a Gabor Mate, it doesn't mean that you're ready to embrace what he has to give you. Now, just in case you are ready, but he doesn't like you, you can't get what he has. So there are so many moving parts. Okay. The nice thing is, should the two of you come together at the right time, you've tried again and again, you failed. You're depressed, you are open. Now remember, depression means you find yourself at a place of helplessness. You've read books, you've talked to people, you've written your journals, you've done YouTubes, you've done therapy, you've done drugs. There is nowhere else you can go. Now you're wide open as well as closed. Okay? Socrates comes to you, somehow he has the power to open you. You are in a receptive mood. Okay? He experiments with you. Or she. Okay? Now here's the thing you need to know about Socrates and Leah, or Socrates and Rhett. We are pleasure-driven animals. Leah, we don't enjoy pain. We don't like to make sacrifices. This is a stupid class, and you have to write stupid essays. And I'll tell you what most students will do. A week before the assignment is due, they'll log in. They listen to this audio for 5 seconds, they listen to another audio for 10 seconds, then they will write some stupid essay. And there is no humility in them. They say, oh, this deserves an A. If not an A, at least a B. If not a B, at least a C. The truth is, it deserves an F. Okay. Sacrifice means you've taken a class, you want to get an A because you want to get yourself to UCLA. How do you make the sacrifice? Well, your friends call and say, we have a party tonight. You say no, you stay home. The lecture is boring. You pay attention, you take notes, despite your body telling you, run away. You're future-oriented. You make sacrifices. Now, what Socrates gives you demands you making some sacrifices. If you're not social, if he says, come to my house, God damn it, go to his house. If it takes you a while to warm up to people, overcome that. You gotta do everything you don't like that he asks you to do. Those are the sacrifices you make. And these are just baby steps. And those baby steps are tough. And then you realize something different, Leah, that little by little, Socrates begins to have more space inside you that you wanted. And then he gives you language. Then he gives you thoughts. Then he gives you emotions. And after 10 years, you realize, oh, everything about you has changed. Then you use your past as a good teacher to learn from. That's what happens. Now, here's the other part that you need to understand. This is America. It's not India. It's not many parts of Africa. It's not Singapore. It's not the Middle East. Americans are always on warp speed. They want things to be done quickly. And most of life stuff, Leah, it takes decades to get fixed. So for those of you in this class who enjoy going to IKEA and looking at something for 10 minutes and going to the basement and finding the aisle and the shelf and going back home and putting the stuff together in 10 minutes, that's not the way human beings function. It takes time. Writing a good personal statement, it just takes time. So, Leah?
What is you? So you mentioned Carlos Castaneda before
Yes.
in the previous classes,
Right.
and his experience with psychedelics, I think.
Mhm.
John Wall. And then Gabor Mate, his experience using psychedelics to help reduce time. How does a person know if they're ready for that experience? Like, some people, they take psychedelics and they go insane for the rest of their lives.
So, if you have a good teacher, they'll know if that path will work for you or not. Let me give you an example. Jean-Paul Sartre, he is a 20th century existential philosopher, and by existential, I simply mean, unfortunately for him, he came at a time where there was really no longer a center to our life. Religion had lost its power. You don't really have a culture that answers the bigger questions of life. So you're on your own, basically. You know, it's kind of like what Sigmund Freud had mentioned. You're born and you hold your father's hand for a number of years, and you hold your mother's hand for a number of years. That foundation is there. So every time you run into a difficulty, you go to your parents. In the absence of having parental figures, you're on your own. At the age of 2, you realize, you know, you're just the outcome of sex. There is no love. There is no foundation. You have no home. You have a house. It's never been a home. You don't know what love is. You don't know what trust is. You don't have no idea what faith is. None of those things exist for you. So you just kind of have to figure things out on your own. And the truth is, you like a car that has 4 wheels or 4 tires and 3 are flat, and you're barely just managing. Okay. So Jean-Paul Sartre was born around the time where society no longer had any meaningful things to offer anyone, you know. He experimented with psychedelics. Now you're talking about a Westerner, you're talking about doing psychedelics, not having a teacher. It's just everywhere now, you know, it's like the hippie movement, the 60s. So when Sartre experimented with psychedelics, he thought that everywhere he walked, he was in the presence of demons, that they were haunting him. He was about to die. And so his companion, Simone de Beauvoir, had told him, just close your eyes for a number of weeks. Because the moment your eyes open, you think that there are demons everywhere, okay? The flip side is Castaneda. Before your teacher actually gives you drugs, you guys have conversations. He teaches you about the culture he came from. He teaches you about the culture of the plants, plant teachers, you know. And then should he or she find you worthy of what they have to give you, then, you know, your final gift is they give you some drugs, again, in a very controlled environment, and then you have a positive experience. If you go to Berkeley, you'll see all these bulletins everywhere. You know, sweat lodges, psychedelic camps. Don't do any of them. In fact, just avoid Berkeley altogether. Yeah. You know, Leah, I loved Persian ice cream. But then when I got this pain, middle of my heart, and I had it checked out, and they told me that my arteries are just clogged. And then they did this surgery for about 8 hours, and I was in a coma for about 2 days. The first thing the doctor said, anything fatty, avoid. Just eat vegetables. Now, you're talking about a guy who's, for the past like 50 some odd years, has been eating like junk. But it really takes the experience of death to teach you a couple of lessons. Now, here's the thing you need to know, Leah. When God and death are not looking, I eat a little ice cream. But I gulp it down with a little death. So we all forget. Real anything? No.
Was that India you said that writes down all their sadness?
India?
You said over in another country that write
No.
they write poetry or something.
Yeah.
Is that India you were talking about?
That's any culture that has depth to it. Africa has been around for cradle of civilization, 5,000 years of history. The Middle East. The point I'm trying to make is the following. Look, Rhett is how old? 20. I'm 63 almost. I have about 40 years on him. That gives me a sort of depth that he doesn't have. Now, he may think much better than I, but the emotions that live inside me have depth that he currently cannot have. He's far too young. He lacks certain experiences. Now, he may say wonderful things about marriage, but he's not married yet. He may say wonderful things about children, but he doesn't have any kids yet. He may have wonderful ideas about a PhD, but he doesn't have them yet. And just because you have ideas, it doesn't mean you understand. It simply means you have ideas. So if you've been around like Africa for 5,000 years of recorded history, and that's what we mean by history. Writing comes about 3,000 years, okay? So you have 3,000 years of recorded history. And those 3,000 years means you've seen a lot of life, you've seen a lot of destruction, you've seen a lot of death, you've seen a lot of sadness. What the hell do you do with all this stuff? If you were to be depressed, well, the entire culture would collapse. You have to make sense out of this. So how do you make sense? You create religion, you create philosophy, you create poetry. You create coping mechanisms that keeps the entire culture healthy. You create stories. Right now, America doesn't have any stories. And the stories that they do have are just a page long. The stories that India has, Pakistan has, China has, Africa has, they're like Harry Potter. 5,000 pages. One of the most important and interesting stories that I think all of you in this class should at some point in your life read is the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's the first written story. It has everything. It talks about how all of us in this class get drunk by power. How you're born innocent and you become slowly contaminated. And then you walk into society and society gives you a certain amount of power. And then you get drunk by that power. And once in a while you say, man, I really miss my innocence. It's like you're a father, or you're going to be a father, and you have all these wonderful things you imagine about yourself and fatherhood. And at a certain point, your kid just screams a bit too much, or is naughty a bit too much, and you spank him. Because you lose patience. You just don't have that much capacity. It's the end of the day, you're exhausted. And then you look at your kid meanly, or you kind of tap him on the head and he just kind of sits and cries. And then you walk into your room and you say, God damn it. I had promised myself never to physically, be mean to my kid. And so what you have is a conflict between power and innocence, remembering what you wanted to be and how you've become. And that's what Gilgamesh, has to kind of wrestle with. And then he longs, kind of like the question that Leah asked. How do I change myself? How do I baptize myself? How do I transform myself? And he cries and he pleads, and everybody in his family knows. His mother, Ninsun, goes to the gods and says, you have given me a son whose heart knows no rest. It's like you buy a house, you turn it into a home, then it turns into a house. You say, God damn it, I worked so hard into making this place a home. It's just a goddamn house. I worked so hard into making my marriage into a companionship. Hello, Abhi. Thank you so much. You didn't have to. You're very kind. Thank you. And And I look at my companion and I feel so lonely. You know, I had kids to create a community. I just feel estranged, like I have no place to go. Nobody understands me. And he falls into depression. Then he falls into love. Then he comes to understand there are two different kinds of love. You have a kind of love that is physical. Then you have a kind of love that is emotional and spiritual. And then he looks for a guide, a spiritual guide. He finds a spiritual guide only to come to realize that even Jesus Christ can't give you anything, man. You got to do this on your own. Then he finds the kingdom of God and he realizes he can't just have this kingdom of God to himself. He goes around because he wants to share that with everybody in his town, only to realize no one really cares. 5,000 years ago, man, there was a guy who desired the same things that you and I desire. The only difference is that you now create a culture where we are interested in Kim Kardashian and Beyonce and Taylor Swift and not Gilgamesh. That's the only difference. You know, and someone asked in this class if there's a book for this class, and I said, no, I don't believe in books. And the truth is, you have to go through many, many different ups and downs in life to have the right eyes, to be able to read the words and understand them the right way and feel them the right way. You know, I mean, I don't know Leah from Adam. I haven't read her letter of reference or recommendation or whatever that she has to present to this committee. But my hope is when she submits her application, the person who is reading her letter of interest, that person has gone through a few episodes in life, has reflected as well as felt. So that person can read beyond the words, you know, and it takes a long time for that to happen.
Just like you say, through experience.
Yeah.
That's how we learn.
I mean, for those of you in this class who have some beef with your parents, you know, you don't like your parents, I gotta tell you, man, parents have it tough. Because first of all, no one becomes a parent by planning parenthood. You plan to have sex, but you don't plan to have a child. Maybe the second one, but certainly not the first one. You know? And then you think you're going to be the best dad and the best mom. You know? And then you realize, well, shit, money is so important. Neighborhood is important. School is important. Patience is important. Having parents around is important. The relatives are important. Emotional stability is important. Things you never imagined in a million years. You have zero resources and you have a brand new life in your hand. You never imagined to betray your child. Shit happens. You know the fifth commandment in the Old Testament, honor thy parents. You know, you honor their dreams and their hopes before you actually came out in the first few days. Once life gets in, man, your capacity gets tested. And you realize how much poverty you really have on the inside. I mean, having kids is great. At the age of 50, 60, 70, not so great. Having kids, great. Living in a crummy neighborhood, not so great. Questions? Yeah. Remind me your name again, sorry. Tasha.
I have a question. I don't remember the details.
Oh, one thing, forgive me, Tasha. Your only task, just in case I forget, and we may run out of time, your only task in class is come to class and only ask questions. We are not open for like class discussions or conversations. Your only task is to ask questions. That's it. Don't give me commentary about anything. Sounds okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
And a man who made nature documentaries, he visited a village in Africa, and he filmed them hunting. They caught a giraffe, and they ate it,
And the village looked at the man who caught the giraffe and they laughed at him and said, how could you bring us back as a joke? Make jokes, saying, no, the ego could get big and grow in society. How can they be so smart in this civilization, our civilization?
We have a poem in Persian. It's an indirect response to your question. And I'll just use you and I. I won't give you the Persian. When you and I live in the streets and the weather is freezing, we have one blanket and we share that blanket, you and I, because we suffer from poverty. Then you win the lottery and I win the lottery. I have my own blanket and you have your own. But I like the color of your blanket. And I will do whatever I can to steal that blanket from you. And the point I'm trying to make, privilege always makes you stupid. Privilege always divides, always. And that's something you should consider when it comes to immigrants. You know, there is something to be said about immigrants. I'm an immigrant. I came here in the late 70s. You come here for hopes and dreams. And you have hopes and dreams because what you already have in your life, they're not answering you. They're not giving you what you want. You know, if you're fantasizing about moving away from your relationship, it's because what you have is not giving you what you want. If you came to this class hoping for ethical theories, that's your dream. Then you look at me and then you listen to me and you say, yuck, this is not what I signed up for. Your dream is not coming true. So what do? You drop it. Okay? And you take another class that fits you better. Whenever you're an immigrant, you leave what little you have. And by little, I mean the following. You have a culture that has been around for 5,000 years. It nourishes you spiritually, emotionally, and intellectually. You just don't have food for your belly. My country, Iran, which right now is a complete mess and has been in chaos for the past few weeks, you know, 60%, close to 60% of its population under the age of 30. What is it that young people want? Young people want to go to school. Young people want to get jobs. Young people want to get married. But when you have a culture that doesn't give you any of those things, what do you have now? Well, you have a lot of young people who have nowhere to go. They get depressed. And in depression, you lose hope. So what happens? When you have no hope and someone says, oh, why don't you apply for citizenship or a green card? Do the lottery version. Just sign up your name, put your name on this list, and you move with hope. And all of a sudden your name comes up. And you get a ticket and you move to America. What you leave behind are your parents, are your culture, the smell of your land, the language, the history, the religion. You leave everything behind. And the only thing you have here is a dream. But for that dream to come true, you work at Home Depot and you go to school. And little by little, you begin to lose all things that used to matter to you. And then you realize you're less Persian and more American. You know. Look, they found a place, anthropologists some years ago, it's a tiny little village in Turkey, okay, that people walk on fours, their hands and their legs. And it was a very strange thing because that's how this culture, this particular village has been functioning for many, many, many hundreds of years. People simply walk with fours. And so they brought in some scientists, some physical therapists, a new philosophy of life, because it's tough to get from point A to point B walking on fours, you know. Because when you're walking with two legs, you can actually run. You can get to point B much faster. And so for the past few years, all these people, scientists and therapists, have been trying to teach these people how to just be on two legs, you know. I think you always have to go to what Henry David Thoreau, the transcendentalist, had argued some years ago. That whenever you get something new in your life, you get some benefits, but you also lose some very, very important things. Is it true that PhD will do wonders for your life, Tasha? Absolutely. Is it also true that your children will lose some valuable time with you? Yes. Is it also true that it may create some friction or space or distance between you and your husband? The answer is yes. Is it worth it? That is only a thing that time will tell. You know.
That turkey story with the people on the floor.
It's true.
Is that an analogy?
No, it's actually a true story. Yeah, you can YouTube it. Yeah. The other thing is, Westerners, I don't know if you've been to Africa, Middle East, India, Mexico. When you go to these places, should you ever go, do me a favor. Spend a week going around Oakland and study homeless people. You know, they just have bad luck, they become homeless, right? Have a chat with them. And then when you go to India or Pakistan or Africa, study the homeless people there. And there's a world of difference. When you run into homeless folks in other parts of the world, they're profoundly dignified and respectful. You don't find that here. Even the homeless situation in this country, there's a good amount of privilege attached to it. Things are just complex, that's all. Ahmed, anything? About what? Good job. Right? Is it time to go? What time is it? 10:54?
I know, me too, right?
Oh, listen, I'm sorry to have kept you. I have to run to Kaiser. So Cassie has to go to San Francisco.
You want us to write the question down, or don't worry about it?
You have to submit them online on Canvas.
Write it down.
It's no. You write down on submit your question
Oh, you write
on
it
Canvas.
down.
Yeah. My apologies for not being clear.
I thought you said at the end.